topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Alise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. This show has been brought to you with pride and passion since February of 2015. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, and if we've not met yet before, I'm an organizational psychologist and logotherapist, speaker, and author, and my team and I at Gusto Now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a culture and leadership activated by meaning and purpose. Our mission is to help our clients create a destination workplace where people flock to join, are intrinsically motivated to perform at their best, can grow into their fuller potential, and are committed to stay and dynamically deliver on the company's mission, which all translates to higher profits for you. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal website, alisecortez.com. Now, getting into today's program, with us is Finnian Kelly. He's the founder of Intentionality, Inc., a sought-after speaker and executive coach, and a leading breathwork facilitator. He helps world-changing leaders implement his intentionality methodology to find new levels of fulfillment and growth in their creative endeavors, relationships, and overall well-being. He's the author of Intentionality, a groundbreaking guide to breath, consciousness, and radical self-transformation, which we'll be talking about today. He joins today from Aspen, Colorado. Finnian, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thanks so much, Alise. I believe I'm going to be very intrigued by this conversation because I feel like we're coming from very similar approaches.
I think so. And I just really want to commend you, young, beautiful friend, this beautiful book that you brought into the word intentionality. You know, it takes a lot to birth a book and actually get it into the world. And I know that you have been transformed in the process. So I have to always start by, where did this book come from? I know you shared in the beginning about the loss of a marriage and all of that pain that was for you. Where did you get the impetus to put this thing into the world?
It was interesting. So when you go through a personal transformation, a lot of people just start asking you for insights. Can you help me with this? And it was funny. People were asking me so early in on my journey. And that's because a lot of them were going through similar challenges, but I was not ready. There was multiple times where I thought about putting a book out, but it felt inauthentic because I hadn't felt confident that I'd gone through the whole process yet. And I'm someone who doesn't believe that you should just share things as you're going through your exploratory phase, because a lot of people then think, oh, that's the way. And they cling to that. And you went, oh no, that was just a part of my journey. And actually I was a little bit off at that time. So I really did wait. There was multiple times where I thought about it, and it was till a place where I got to a place where I went, you know what? I have done this work. I've embodied intentionality. I feel like I've recoded my life in a different way. Now I feel it's coming from a place of authenticity to share that into the world. And that was really it was actually quite funny. My first book, I actually wrote a memoir of my experience. And that was more of a personal, emotive experience. And when I got my book deal with Hay House, which is such an incredible publisher, I just love them. They just said, look, we love this book. However, we think it would be easier for the first time author to launch a bit more of a playbook of how you do it and then share the memoir. Would you be open to writing a book on it? Which I'd always intended to anyway. So I actually focused for the last year and just wrote that book. And now that's what's out right now, which I'm incredibly proud of.
And it's out working in the world and improving people's lives and their relationships and their results. It's just, as somebody who champions meaning and purpose, Finnian, that you've really taking literally what you've learned from your pain and your experience of navigating it, and really learning about intentionality and all the things that you know about breath work, and that you put it into this offering. And now this is not only your book, but also your company. I just really want to applaud you for being obedient to that calling.
Thank you. And for me, what it was it was a long journey. Like that was
I got you.
5-6 years of like the amount of research I did on the mind and how we operate and trauma and how we can achieve all these materialistic items and still not fulfill us. That was a lot of synthesizing. And what I realized is that not everyone has the privilege of, one, the learning ability, the ability to take bits of information, the space to be able to do it. That was too hard, and I didn't want to wish that on anyone. So I just went, well, how can I distill that whole journey into a methodical approach, a place where you can pick up at any point in the book and it can feel, someone said actually, it was like you can enter through many different portals and it will resonate with you. And I'm very grateful. You never know until it's out in the world. It's actually a very vulnerable experience. Oh. And then you hear people's testimonials and references, and what they're saying is like, wow, this is it. As I'm literally reading it, I'm doing the work. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just be sweat. So that's great. I want to do that.
We're losing you a little bit. If maybe you could get closer to the mic just in case that helps. But
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's better. You just kind of drifted a bit. We'll push you back. Okay, so the next thing we have to talk about, which I just think is so wonderful. I love how you describe in your book that you've been dubbed the business mystic, and of course where that comes from, and how in so being called that you feel so seen by that.
Yeah, it's what I like about it is it honors both worlds. I do have a deep business, intellectual, analytical, scientific way of viewing the world. And at the same time, I also have a deep understanding that all the magic is not in the scene. Like the factor of energy, it's not in the scene. And that's at our core, what we actually are is energy, we're vibration. And too often it's been a disconnect between the two. It hasn't been realizing that we need to have both. It's not that one is better than the other. And to be able to have that message and to be able to actually take people on that journey is an incredible privilege of mine. And it's definitely what I feel is my life experience has brought me to this place where I can connect on the scientific, on the entrepreneurial level, on that side of where we like to define ourselves as very logical type of person. And I can take them and go, you know what, I played out that whole scenario and it didn't fulfill me. There's another option. And potentially if you just explore this, we're not saying get rid of that avenue. That's a great avenue. You can still keep playing that, but let's bring in this other part of us. And there's so much more power, so much more capacity that can come from that.
And I do want to brag on you a little bit here, Finnian, beyond what you just said there. I mean, you have a bachelor's degree in mathematics and physics, and then a master's degree of science in positive psychology. That is a smashing combination.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a great combination because it meets both of them, and then people can't challenge it either.
Right. That's why I had to bring it up.
Yeah, that's a lot of what people do, because people will say no to things before they give it a chance, and sometimes you have to meet them where they're at. And luckily, I have that background, which is I feel very privileged for.
Well, and it's a really powerful combination. So the promise and access to intentionality to me is really compelling. You list really, 3 aspects of that. Can you talk about those things so we can just introduce the idea of intentionality?
Yeah, it's this idea that we all have the tools that we were needed to build the life we're searching for. And that's access to the same universal support and our breath, which is our superpower. And why I bring that point up is because for a lot of people, we become a victim of our environment and our experiences. And the reason why we can't be this or have this or transform this is some reason that we'll bring into our life. And there is a lot of inequality in this world. I'm not going to argue about that. There is so much inequality. But if we play in that victim game, then we never actually can transform. So what I wanted to do is remind everyone at our core, we all have been born with the most important tools. So that was the first part. The second part is what we're really looking for, like when we think about the life we're trying to build, we're looking for a feeling. so often we've been told that we want these goals and these outcomes, and once we get that, then we'll actually feel fulfilled or happy. But even that language, fulfilled or happy, what is that? It's a feeling. So we need to flip that and realize, all of life is feelings. That's what we're actually looking for. And then the third is that we have choice. You don't have to stay in this current situation. When you tap into these universal tools, when you tap into the idea of feelings, you can change your situation right now just by taking one breath and going, how do I want to respond instead of reacting to this? Start you on your path of intentionality, and you are choosing to break free of your conditioned programs and create a new life. So that's really what the premise of this book is, to give, and that's why it says like radical self-transformation. It gives you a chance to radically transform your life.
Indeed. I have a book here also that has radical in it as well. I mean, and I love that there's boldness in that, and on the breath part of things, obviously you are an expert in breath work. You have a whole chapter devoted to breath work, and each of your chapters then offers, I don't even know how many various kinds of exercises we can do in breath work. So can maybe you orient us a bit more about the power of breath work, and maybe give us maybe one example or one tool, one exercise.
Yeah. So once again, going back to what is it that we're born with? Whenever we need something from the outside world in order to transform, then that's a challenge. Maybe we don't have the money for it. Maybe we don't have the space for it, time for it. So I wanted to level everyone out. We were born with the breath. When you think about the breath, it represents life. It's the first thing we do when we come out as a baby, and then it's the last thing we breathe out as we cross. It's the one thing we can't live without for the shortest amount of time. So breath is everything. It's also the connector between the subconscious and the conscious minds. It's happening automatically through the autonomic system. We don't have to think about our breath. It's fueling. Breath, oxygen is mixing with glucose, which is creating energy, which is great. However, unlike other faculties in the body, like our digestion, blood, heart rate, we can also consciously control it with our conscious mind. And that tells me that it's a tool that we can use to break free of the automatic programs of the subconscious and go, what is it that we want to behave in a different way? So that's why I've called something called the circuit breakers, which is this idea is that sometimes energy from the outside world comes in, it triggers a subconscious program, automatically that runs, and often that program isn't beneficial for us. It's based on a childhood version which didn't feel safe at that time, and then it creates some form of friction in our life. And we've seen that over and over again when we're like, we don't want that anymore. So instead, we can activate a circuit breaker, which says, danger, danger, energy from the outside world coming in. I need to stop the system from short-circuiting itself so I don't disconnect from my higher self. And when I take that breath, I then can go, I don't want to activate that automatic program because I know where that program goes. It's not enjoyable. It causes problems for me. And instead, what behavior could I do right now which will drive me towards that desired feeling of mine? And that's how we start recoding our process through repetition. So in a really simple form, we could activate a circuit breaker, which I really enjoy. It's this little mind override that when we focus on three things at once, our mind just stops. It's almost like just this peacefulness and calm thing. So and this is the practice presence over comparison one, because often what happens is we do something and we're comparing a sense against ourselves, the ego starts rising up. So if we start just focusing on our breath, just observing our breath flooding out in and out through our nose, and then at the same time as we're observing our breath, we just gently start rubbing our thumb and our index fingers together, very softly, very subtle. And you're paying attention to your breath as well at the same time, those two different sensations. And then you can start rubbing the tongue on your roof of your mouth very slowly at the same time as rubbing your thumb and your fingers, and at the same time as paying attention to your breath. And in that place, there is nothing. There is no thoughts, complete calmness. So I could be yelling at you right now. I could be making you feel like doing something, you're in conflict, and you can start doing that, and you can start allowing that energy to flow through without activating any of these programs. So that's a tool that I use all the times in meetings to ground me when I'm feeling a little bit nervous before going out and doing a keynote delivery, because I'm so focused on worrying about, oh, are they going to like me or anything? I just remind myself, come back to the breath, starts feeling these sensations, and it calms me down. And that's something which, if everyone started doing that, we wouldn't have fights in the world. Because when you're doing that, there's no energy to fight. You're just, you're like, it just washes off you like water off a duck's back.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's so brilliant. And your book is chock full of breath exercises that we can use. So listeners and viewers, let's take our first break and just maybe try what he just did, what he just gave for you, those 3 focal points. We're going to come right back and talk more about what he's offering to us here. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. We've been on the air with Finnian Kelly. He's the founder of Intentionality. He helps world-changing leaders to implement the intentionality methodology to find new levels of fulfillment and growth in their creative endeavors, relationships, and overall well-being. We've been talking about where this book came from, starting to introduce some of the principles. After the break, we're going to get into distinguishing the subconscious, conscious, and universal mind. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. As I'm dedicated to creating a world that we all want to live in, especially in the world of work, I keep researching and writing my own books. So the last book came out in March of 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help readers to really understand today's workforce and what they want. You can learn more about it at alisecortez.com or on Amazon. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Finnian Kelly. He's the author of Intentionality, a groundbreaking guide to breath, consciousness, and radical self-transformation, which we're talking about today. So I was really quite intrigued with the way that you distinguished, subconscious, conscious, and the universal mind. And since you started to introduce that in your last bit, if you could help the listeners and viewers who haven't read your book yet better understand.
Definitely. So what we need to realize is that we're more than just our thinking brain. There's these other parts of our mind. So while I'm here speaking to you right now, there's a conscious mind operating. I'm intellectually, we're connected. I'm answering questions. I'm trying to pull information out there. It's that problem solving thinking side of me. It's also the place of my desires and my aspirations. So that's the conscious mind. And I like to think of that as the masculine energy. It's a direction. It's like, I want to go there. I'm putting my stake in the claim and I'm going to go out and get it. Now, it's great. It's a great brain. It's great at problem solving. However, it's also a little bit inefficient compared to another mind that we have. Our subconscious mind processes information over 1 million times faster than the conscious mind. Think of it as a quantum computer compared to your everyday MacBook. The subconscious, all we need to realize about the intelligence of the subconscious is to reflect on what is happening right here, right now. Like I just ate a scone before I did this. Now I'm not having to think about how to process that food. It's just going down, it's being broken down, it's feeding into energy, it's going to different things, I'm then going to waste, my breathing's happening regulated. It's just all happening automatically, which is brilliant. Because imagine if we had to invest energy on working out all those processes every day. It'd be very, very exhausting. The subconscious is also the place of the automatic programs. The conscious mind uses up a lot of energy. So the subconscious, think of it as an energy conserver, and it goes, well, okay, if this is something which is regularly going to be done, I'm going to take this away from the conscious mind. It's almost like the first example of robots. It's like, I'm going to create like a robot, an AI process, a bot to do this, so you never have to waste energy thinking about this again. And simple examples of this are brushing your teeth, tying up shoelaces, driving to work. We're not really thinking about that. It's just on autopilot. Now, that's great. And it helps us, and it helps us make better decisions. The challenge with it is a lot of the subconscious programs that we've created in our life aren't actually beneficial for us, because in the first 7 years of our life, the conscious mind isn't turned on, which is really the protector of the subconscious. And the subconscious is just absorbing everything and taking on directions from the world. So we got some great programs of how to survive, but unfortunately that was most of our programs were how to survive. And then we live our life through that lens, and the subconscious doesn't have the ability to deduce between truth and untruth. It just goes whatever the strongest emotion is. So if you felt and some experience that because of something that's happened with your mum and you suddenly felt unworthy, it's going to create a program that you're not worthy, and that's going to be the lens that you view your life through. So it's very important to understand what coding do we have in our subconscious. And then the universal mind, think of it as the essence behind all living energies. And when I say living, it is everything. It's that energy. It's that higher source. And the nature of the universal mind is that it's all-knowing, it's in everything at all times, and we are manifestations of. It's why in spiritual texts they'll talk about you are God, like you are one of the aim, because if by the nature of it being in everything at all times, it means that you have to be it as well. So what that does is it helps us realize that there is this energy, this bigger source of energy that's available to all of us. And that's almost like, think of it as the internet, like the internet of the world. Like we all have access to this information. So understanding how those three layers work are really important. And ultimately what we're trying to do is get alignment between the three. We want to have, all right, this is where I want to go in my life. I then want a subconscious program which then supports that, doesn't challenge it, doesn't question it. It goes, oh yeah, I believe in abundance. I want abundance. My subconscious program believes in abundance. That's a lot more helpful than my subconscious program believing in scarcity and then working against my conscious mind, because the subconscious will always win. And then the universal mind, in its essence, it just is. It's pure life force energy. So whatever you want, it will just materialize into that form. So if we're not getting what we want in our life, it's an example that potentially we have a subconscious program working against us. And then that's a cue to go, doesn't matter how much you keep wanting, you actually need to do the process of recoding. You need to take out that faulty code and put in the new code. And that's what really the whole book is about, is to go through this recoding process to get that alignment. And that's when you get radical transformation, because suddenly you wake up one day and you realize, oh, wow, I'm very different right now. And my life looks completely different because of it.
So powerful, Finnian. Oh my gosh, you said so much in that share there. Thank you for that. That was incredibly elucidating and really compelling and inspiring and encouraging as well. So, which is why I wanted to have you on the program. I don't generally bring on people who can't contribute to elevating us.
Thank you very much, because it's also elevating me. That's what, like, we all rise up together.
Absolutely.
Or we connect out there, and we see this. It's that language of you are the sum of the five people around you. It's because their energy imprint is rubbing off on you, and it challenges your beliefs. It's all just perspective. That's what life is really at. You can have two people going through the same life experience, and one person could see it as negative, and the other person can see it as beautiful. Classic example is children. They're just so pure. What do we do when we go out and see it's rainy? We go, oh, the day's ruined. Oh, I wanted this other weather. What do kids do? They're like, amazing. They're just playing in the rain.
I want to go play in the puddles. Yeah.
Who has the bit better perspective? And that's the example of life. Two things like exactly the same. One person sees it one way, one person sees it the other. And all I care about is, are your beliefs serving you? That's really all I want to focus on. I don't mind what you believe in, but if it's not serving you and it's not helping raise consciousness, then maybe it's a time to let go of that story, because that's all a belief is. It's just a perspective.
Right. And we can go there next. I do want to come back to energy again a bit more deeper, but let's talk about belief loops now, because you talk about the positive ones, the negative ones. We all have them. The question is, to what extent are we aware of them? And have we done the work that you put forth in your book of recoding them where necessary?
Yeah. So what I talk about a belief loop is it's this idea that our core beliefs, which are formed in our subconscious, that's where they're actually kept. It's this permanent code. Whatever that code is, will start spitting out outcomes. It's like the results of the program into your life. So if you have a core belief, then that drives certain thoughts, which is the mental chatter that goes on in your head, the chatter that's happening all day long. Or it could be, whoa, I'm a loser. I'm not going to make anything of myself. Or it could be, oh, life is amazing. So many opportunities. It all depends on what your core belief is. Then those thoughts, once you have those thoughts, you act on those thoughts. You do some sort of behavior, and then those behaviors result in a feeling. And the subconscious takes on the directions from the strongest feeling. So by the nature of that feeling, it reaffirms that belief loop. And that's why it's called a loop, because after a while, it just keeps spinning and spinning and it gets stronger. Doesn't mean it was necessarily true. It's just something called cognitive dissonance, is we twist information to support our beliefs. So over time, something that might have been a made up belief becomes something that you think is just completely true. And that's why we have all these great divides in the world right now, because we're getting fed information to support the beliefs, even if they're not completely true. So what we need to do is to understand that we have all these programs running, and the way to identify, do I have a positive belief loop running or a negative belief loop, is literally to just explore our feelings. Mm-hmm. If we have more pleasant feelings, that's an example that we have a positive belief loop going. If we have negative feelings, it's an example we have a negative belief loop. If we keep saying, I want this, but you behave a different way, that's an example where your conscious mind and your subconscious minds are in conflict. And it doesn't matter how much you consciously want it, you've got to go and treat the cause. You've got to get down into the grounding of it. So once we start realizing we're just a byproduct of belief loops, we realize that, I can also go through a process of recoding it. I'm not broken. I'm not faulty. I just have some faulty code inside of me. And I feel like that's a very liberating experience, because one of the biggest misconceptions in the world is when people say, that's just the way I am, or I'm hardwired that way. Listen to language, it's coding. You're not that way. And I people witness transformation all the time. I'm like, they'll believe in this way, in one way, we let it go, and they're like, wow, my life's different. No wonder why, because the outside is just a representation of the inside.
Oh, Finny, that's so good. I love your energy. And speaking of that, I want to talk more about that. So I appreciate so much how you situate that everything in us is energy. And you talk about the importance of really understanding the criticality of energy and understanding imbalance. I want to read something really quick from your book and let you respond to it, because it was very powerful and eye-opening for me. You say, we are all made of energy. It is important to understand the energy centers of the body, because these are areas that can become blocked, stagnant, or misaligned. These types of energy imbalances can lead to physical illness, mental distress, emotional dysregulation, and spiritual disconnect. After long periods of time, a blocked area can even cause you to continuously attract negative circumstances.
It's confronting, isn't it?
It's very confronting.
Yeah. When you start realizing that it's all just energy, and that everything starts in the energetic field first, and then it materializes down into a physical structure through illness or injury, suddenly it can be confronting, because you're like, what? This sickness or this injury is a byproduct of me not processing something when I was younger. That can be very challenging, because we actually, in a weird way, would rather it just to be, well, I just got this. But if you actually really lean into that, it also means, well, maybe if I deal with this unintegrated emotion, perhaps then it would release the material form that's happening. Because whatever is in the emotional signature first, it just has to transfer down to the material realm. So rather than focusing on changing the material, let's just focus on changing the emotional signature, and then by nature it has to flow down. So that's a very liberating experience. Energy at its core is all we're at. And something what I always share with people, and I do this when I just coached this team who got a world record across the country, and it was a teamwork experience. I just said, like, we're spending a lot of time together, but what we're really doing is we're investing a lot of energy with each other, and it's going to be the energy that determines if we're going to win this world record. And what I want you to check in with yourself in every moment are going, am I giving energy or am I taking energy from the system? Because the amazing thing about energy is if you keep giving energy, it just keeps building in the system. But if you take from the system, you're depleting the system. And that little check would be super powerful. And people would start realizing, oh, maybe I start getting some more opportunities in my life because you're actually giving energy from people. People start wanting to be around you. People appreciate you. And so that's just a little check that I'm always just asking is, am I bringing energy into it? And it's okay. Like, another thing, we have a tool in the book about a meeting guide about how to bring consciousness to really solid meetings. And there's 4 questions. And the 4th question, which is actually the most important, is, do we have the right energy for this meeting to be successful? And the first thing you need to do is check in, where's my energy right now? And I coach a lot of CEOs on that, and they have to be honest. You know what? My energy is cranky. I'm frustrated. So imagine what you're going to do coming into that meeting. Do you think you're going to be helpful? No, you're going to pull energy out of that system, and then it's going to cause problems. So the better thing to do then is just go, okay, I need to take responsibility for my energy. I might say, let's not do this meeting. Or if you're really conscious, you might do some form of energy experience, activate a circuit breaker and get back into your body and be present, and then show up in a different way. Also the same when we're coming home to our partners or whatever. Always be mindful, what is the energy that's needed to have the greatest impact in that moment?
I so align with this, Finnian. It's so incredibly beautiful. Let's grab our last break. I'm Alise Cortez, your host. We've been on the air with Finnian Kelly. He's the founder of Intentionality. He helps world-changing leaders implement the intentionality methodology to find new levels of fulfillment and growth in their creative endeavors, relationships, and overall well-being. We've been talking about a few of the key concepts from his book. There are many. After the break, we're going to get into this whole idea of how you can situate the question of how do you want to feel to start really moving your life forward. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Alise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Alise to speak to your organization, please visit her at alisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Alise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Alise, send an email to Alise, A-L-I-S-E, at alisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thank you for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Alise Cortez. As I mentioned in the last break, my last book came out in March of 2023 called The Great Revitalization. What I did for you is I created a 3-page assessment that you can pull off my website to determine the extent to which your company and its culture are actually operating in a way that meets the discerning standards of today's workforce. You can find it at gusto-now.com. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Finnian Kelly. He's the author of Intentionality, a groundbreaking guide to breath, consciousness, and radical self-transformation, which is what we're talking about today. One of the many things I appreciate about your work, Finnian, is your focus on the realm of feelings. I really have been grateful to see that feelings are starting to get their place in the sun these days in an increasingly fashion. It used to be, we used to stuff them, didn't talk about them. Whatever you do, don't express them. And I'm really happy to see your work bringing them to the surface. And so in your impressions chapter and throughout the book, of course, you give the question of, instead of asking, what do I want, but to ask, how do I want to feel? And I think that's really, really powerful. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I'd been living my life in a future-focused direction. And part of that, in hindsight was because I didn't feel safe in my present experience. It wasn't lighting me up. So I constantly just started focusing on, well, maybe when I achieve this, when I have this, I'll feel better. But the problem about when is a great illusion. When either never comes, or you actually, what happened to me is you get the when, and then you don't get the sense of satisfaction feeling that you're hoping you're going to get. You actually didn't even know what you wanted. You just didn't want what you wanted right now. So what I realized was, well, I didn't want, like, I spent 25 years on that journey. I want people to be able to identify this a little bit earlier. And what I realized was one day I woke up and I said, I never want to feel this way again. And I had a little light bulb moment, because I didn't say I never want to think that way again. I said I never want to feel that way. And then I went, well, what is it that I want to feel? Well, right now, I just don't want to feel this miserable. That was literally the core of it. So I went, okay, I reflected, what makes me feel a little bit better? And I went things were like when I sit in the sun, when I go for a walk, when I do something kind for someone, when I eat good food. And I just wrote this rudimentary list of things, because I wasn't focusing on a future. I was just, how do I get through this day? And I started doing these activities, and I realized I started feeling better. And then I just started realizing maybe that's how I need to live my life, and just start focusing on what are the feelings I need to do to help me go, all right, what are the behaviors that will drive those feelings? And it created more flexibility in my life, because it meant that I wasn't relying on some material, some external achievement to make something, and I didn't have to wait years in the future. I could have that right now. Now, in the business sense, people often go, well, feelings, how can we honor feelings? And it's such a funny thing, because in business, what are we ultimately doing? Business is selling something to someone. And how do we get someone to buy something? We get them to feel something. We want them, well, I want that to be cooler. I want that to attract love. It's all feelings. It's all something to make them feel a little bit better. So we already know that we're selling to humans who all they care about is feelings. And what is business? It's a collection of humans. And by nature, every single human, it doesn't matter how logical, how analytical you think you are, we all have feelings. And our subconscious, which determines 95% of our daily decisions, thoughts, and behaviors, how has that been formed? It's been formed through feelings. So when people say, oh, I'm not a feelings-based person, I just go, you're lying. That's actually all we are. All we are at our core is feelings. So it's better to be aware of them and see how they're impacting the decisions. And like you said, a lot of the time what we do is we suppress, we express, or we numb. That's sort of our three approaches. But by the nature of doing that, we actually create more of those feelings. So it's better just to honor these situations and call it out and then address it. Now, it doesn't mean we become a victim of our feelings. I think that's sometimes the fear of, I don't want to bring feelings into the business, because then I'm going to allow people to be victims. But actually, it's the cue to go, well, if you start seeing people constantly keep talking about these feelings and you see that they're behaving a particular way, it's a cue that they've got a negative belief loop running. And it doesn't matter how much you want them to change, they have to believe and have to want to change themselves. So the feelings are actually the cue of potentially what faultiness do we have running in the individual humans in the business. And that's where we get a radical transformation. And the more we create a feeling of, in business, we are a team, we care about each other, we're united, it creates a strength that then you can handle anything. It creates resilience. So it's actually in business's best interests to acknowledge feelings and call them out, because they're impacting every decision, every moment of the day anyway.
And listeners and viewers, just to sort of call out something that you wouldn't know yet about Finnian, but I do because I have read his book. We're talking about a man and hearing from a man who has built a few multi-million-dollar businesses. So he's not just sort of, putting this out there as pie in the sky. This man's lived this. And so, there's a reason he's called the business mystic. So really, really awesome. And I'm so aligned with this, Finnian, and I'm so excited to see you bring it to life in the way that's so accessible for us.
And you know what, Alise? Like, yes, I've had some success, but I look back and I go, oh, I was faulty with all of these things as well.
Well, you say that, I know, in the book, I know.
Yeah, if I could just know what I know now, it'd be very different. I'm lucky I have a new business, which is incredible. It's called Cascada, which is a hydrothermal wellness resort and a whole revolutionary wellness concept. And we're getting to apply this in a different way. And luckily I get to work with other organizations, which is very fun. And that's where I just realized you always know, you look back and you go, yep, could have done that very differently.
And maybe had even much better results, of course.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Well, we would be remiss, as you say, that so much of your book is about coding and recoding. But there's a part of this that when you talk about, the coding piece, that's really essential for us to get to, and that's this idea of repetition.
Yeah.
Let's go there next.
Yeah. Repetition is how programs are initially formed. It's a thought which has then been acted on, which has then got a feeling resonated over and over again. Eventually the subconscious goes, oh, this is a strong enough feeling. I'm going to create a program to make this automatic. So that's how it's formed originally. Also, we are getting bombarded all the time with impressions, and it's through that repetition that eventually the subconscious goes, okay, that's familiar. I'm going to create a habitual program around that. So we need to be very mindful of what are we allowing in and what are the behaviors that we're doing each day. It's also the way we can recode it as well, is to go, okay, if I don't like my current program, well, every day, if I do a different behavior, eventually that's going to result in an outcome, which is going to result in a different feeling. And once you get enough evidence of that, you'll start creating a strong enough feeling, and the subconscious will go, okay, new program. I'm going to create a new program in that way. And the way I like to describe it is we have to brush our teeth and floss our teeth every single day. That's the repetition. If we don't, what happens? We get decay, and we get a new paradigm that I've gone from healthy mouth to unhealthy mouth. Now, in the dental analogy, we could go to a dentist and get that fixed, but if we don't brush and floss our teeth afterwards, what's going to happen? It's just going to go back to the old program. And there's something I talk about in the book about energy interventions, where in a short amount of time with a lot of energy, we can effectively be the dentist. We can clean up that old program, but we still need to do the daily repetition. And that's where it needs to be very aware. And that's what intentionality really is identifying how you want to feel, and then every day taking incremental steps towards making that a reality. What are the little differences that you could do today compared to yesterday? And one of the greatest things I do to help me recode myself is I reflect each day, and I reflect, how did I go against my intention? And I go, if I had my time again, in each of those moments where perhaps I didn't do a very desirable behavior and it led to a potentially a situation which wasn't that fulfilling and it didn't give me positive feelings, what would I do differently? And then I revise it in my imagination, because the subconscious can't tell the difference between something happening in real life or your imagination. And then I also, tomorrow, I'm now prepared if that situation comes up again, maybe I'll take a different path. And you won't always get it perfect, but if you bring that level of awareness, before you know it, you can transform your life. And we know this because there's been plenty of times where one time you're running not very healthy, and then you got around a new person, for example, who just said, oh, let's just go to the gym. And at the start, it was very challenging. And then after a while, one day it just clicked, and now you're actually like, oh, I've got to go to the gym. Like, I've got to go run because I know what happens. I enjoy it so much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I appreciate too, Finnian, that you also, when you talk about energy interventions, I appreciate that you use them. You say energy interventions can interrupt our deep-rooted coding and can empower us to heal old wounds and let go of them permanently. That's incredibly powerful. And at the same time, we can also use energy interventions to jumpstart our system and create access to higher levels of consciousness. Now that gets really exciting to me. That would be my love language right there. Are you trying to, touch my heart or my soul? It's working. So exciting that what we can do with this. Talk about transformation.
It is. It gets really exciting. Once you start playing in this world, you realize, wow, anything is on the table. Like, everything can be transformed. And what you had a story of yourself, we can change that in 30 minutes. I've witnessed that many a times in my breath journeys. I do these big breath journeys where people are breathing and they think, what breathing? How can that change your life? And suddenly they're traveling to different places. They're witnessing people who have died. They're saying sorry to people that have hurt them. They're releasing different parts of themselves, and they step up. And although they look the same, they know they're not the same. They've had an energetic experience that the intellect will never properly be able to comprehend, but it doesn't matter because they have a felt perception where they know. And that's what this energy world is about, is the intellect can never understand the energy, but you know, when you witness something, when you feel something, it's in you. And it doesn't matter if someone else is telling you something else. It's like, yeah, I've experienced this, and that's all I really care about. So what I challenge people to do is explore some of these energy interventions, whether it's going on a darkness retreat, whether it's doing a medicine journey, whether it's doing a breath journey. There are so many different ways. And what really makes me feel so sad is when I just see people who are in so much suffering, so much misery, and they're lost and they're confused. And I just went, oh, if only you knew that there's all these other ways out there. And it's great, people in therapy, like I think that's a great first step. But talking, what is talking? It's just literally replaying the story.
Yeah.
We need to get into the body. We need to have a felt perception. And once people start feeling safe to feel, they start releasing, and the energy starts releasing, what we spoke about, the blocked energy centers. Once they start releasing, then these energy centers can start doing what they're meant to be doing, which is then their power centers. And they can be magnetic, and they can attract things in your life rather than repelling or attracting misery into your life. And once we get that fully opened up, you become this expressive being, and life is a miracle constantly.
And you are literally walking, living proof of that, my friend. We are really at the close of the show here, and I want to give you a chance to close the show. I mean, I wanted to be able to talk about how we can embrace love or presence or feelings. And I don't know if you want to somehow tie that into a close, but you know that this show is listened to by people around the globe, and they really care about improving themselves, their leadership, their companies, to be able to make work a playground, a destination workplace. What would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, I want to quickly summarize the 5 key intentions, because I feel like if you just focus on these, your life will change. We've already discussed about energy. Let's start playing the energy game rather than the time game. Checking in, how is my energy? Am I bringing energy into this world? We've spoken about feelings. That's the master key intention. Prioritize feelings over outcomes. Let's give up. It's not saying give up all your goals. It's just saying let's start realizing why is it that we want that goal, and then let's focus on that feeling. And every day go, am I doing the behaviors that lead to that feeling? We also need to be present in our experience rather than comparing against someone else or a version of ourselves. Just come back into the present moment. And that's where that beautiful circuit breaker that I taught before can pull you back into that present moment. We need to be disciplined. Realize that life is flexible. And whenever we create rigidity, it gives us a chance for our ego to criticize us. So just be disciplined. Discipline is about self-care. Each day going, am I doing my practices? And if not, it's okay. Be disciplined to be compassionate to yourself and really move on. And then finally, are we choosing love? Fear is always available to us. It can always take hold of us, but fear paralyzes, stops us. And what it does is it gives us no chance of transformation, no success. So love is leaning in and just going, wow, the universal mind, there's this lovely force of energy that's available to me. I choose to connect to that. And if we play out those 5 key intentions every day, before we know it, our life will dramatically change. Also, our businesses will dramatically change. Businesses explode when they start living by these 5 key intentions. And then we don't even need to worry about anything else. We just act in that way and will play out. So that's what I really recommend for you. I recommend just looking at the book, trying these things. Don't trust me. That's the most important thing. Don't trust me. Trust yourself with a felt experience. And then go, is this good or not good for me?
Finnian Kelly, you are a gift to the planet. It is a wonderful gift for me to get to experience you, to learn from you, to be inspired by you, and share with my listeners and viewers around the world. Thank you for being on Working on Purpose.
Thanks for your great passion, Alise. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, just so you know, you can run, but you can't hide from me now. So now I know where you're at, and sometimes I do pass through Aspen. So
I would love that. Thank you.
you're so welcome. Listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Finnian Kelly, the work he does at Intentionality as a breathwork facilitator, and an executive coach, among other things, and his new book, Intentionality. So visit his website. It's finniankelly.com. Let me spell that for you. FINNIANKELLY, finniankelly.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch a video recorded podcast. We were on air with Corinna Kilcoyne talking about her new book, Rise Above the Story, Free Yourself from Past Traumas and Create the Life You Want. She taught us how to understand our emotional pains and traumas, and then we can let our story serve us by finding the silver lining and change the dynamic. And then we can then change our relationship with our story and no longer be beholden to it as a victim, and instead can look for the good that came from the story as well as the pain. Next week we'll be on air with former Blockbuster and 7-Eleven CEO James Keyes talking about his new book, Education is Freedom, the future in your hands, which provides the what, why, and how of learning. Should be a pretty fascinating conversation. See you there. And remember, work is one of the best means and adventures of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Alise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.